Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, it is a pleasure to brief the Security Council today on the situation in Central Africa and the activities of the United Nations Regional Office for Central Africa, UNOCA, remotely for the second time this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic seems generally under control in the sub-region, with only 13,470 active cases as of 7th December, for a total of 88,422 cases and 1,614 deaths officially reported since the beginning of the pandemic, although in recent days, the number of infections in some countries have been on the rise again, thus delaying the lifting of some of the restrictions imposed to counter the evolution of the pandemic. The trends across Central Africa clearly indicate that the early measures enforced by the government of the sub-region to contain and reduce the propagation of the pandemic have proven effective. However, this effectiveness comes at the high socioeconomic cost, as the economic slowdown triggered by the pandemic and the different restrictive measures further deplete the already limited capacity of the states to provide basic social services to their populations. I would like to encourage bilateral and multilateral partners to avail their support to all countries in the sub-region to help them continue to fight the pandemic and address its economic, socio-political, and security impact. I also appeal to international financial institutions to continue to facilitate the release of emergency assistance for all COVID-19 affected countries in Central Africa. Notwithstanding this peculiar context that impacted the smooth implementation of UNOCA mandate, I was able to engage with the key UN, national and international partners in the sub-region on various issues, including during my recent visits to Cameroon and the Republic of the Congo. On 1st December, I convened a meeting of heads of UN presences in Central Africa, during which we agreed, among others, to reinforce coordination in supporting regional efforts to address the impact of climate change, prevent election-related violence, and fight against hate speech. Mr. President, I'm pleased to report that ICAS has reached a key milestone in its institutional reform process, with the swearing in of its new commission on 1st September, including its president, Ambassador Gilberto da Piedad Bellissimo, its vice president, and 5 commissioners. The convening of 2 ordinary summits of head of state and government is further evidence that regional leaders are determined to enhance regional integration and address peace and security issues in Central Africa. I therefore was pleased to witness such commitment at the 18th Ordinary Summit of ICAS held in Libreville on 27 November, which adopted the ICAS Indicative Strategic Plan for 2021-2025 and Priority Action Plan for 2021, and decided to appoint a mediator and deploy an election observation mission for the upcoming presidential and legislative elections in the Central African Republic. Ahead of the summit, UNOCA has been engaging with the new commission to identify joint priorities for the years ahead, notably on conflict prevention and regional integration, enhanced coordination and international partners for the implementation of 2021-2025 Indicative Strategic Plan. While the reformed ICAS institutions are gradually becoming operational, the United Nations Standing Advisory Committee on Security Questions in Central Africa, UNSAC, remains a relevant forum where the country of Central Africa discuss and make recommendations aimed at addressing regional peace and security challenges. The 50th ministerial session of UNSAC took place virtually on 4th December. The committee reviewed the regional peace and security situation, discussed the situation in the Central African Republic, and held a debate on the impact of COVID-19 on peace and security and on official electoral processes in Central Africa. The committee adopted declarations on the two latter issues, stressing the need to reinforce regional cooperation in addressing them. Mr. President, several countries of the sub-region have been preparing for the holding of elections, including Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Republic of Congo, and Sao Tome and Principe. On 6 December, Cameroon successfully held its first ever regional elections aimed at finalizing the decentralization process in the country, including the implementation of a special statute for the Northwest and the Southwest regions. In the preparation for 2021 presidential election took place on 25th and 26th November with the participation of opposition parties. In Chad, following the recommendation from the Second National Inclusive Forum convened by the authorities from 29 October to 1st November, amendments were voted through the Constitution on 3rd December. The amendments included the creation of a position of Vice President, the re-establishment of the Senate, and a Court of Auditors, as well as reduction of the minimum age to stand as candidate in the presidential election from 45 to 40 years. As election preparations continue in the months ahead, I would like to encourage national authorities and all political stakeholders to promote continued dialogue and consensus on the conditions governing the elections, using political dialogue frameworks where they are in place, as is the case, for instance, in Chad and the Republic of the Congo, or through ad hoc arrangements. To be effective, such dialogue initiative should be inclusive both in terms of participation and the issue discussed. I will continue to offer the good offices of the Secretary General wherever required to encourage inclusive and meaningful political dialogue in the countries preparing for election. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, insecurity across all of Central Africa continues to be a source of concern, including when it has a cross-border dimension, particularly in the Lake Chad Basin and the Gulf of Guinea, and with respect to the internal situation in certain countries. During my last visit to Cameroon in November, I noted with great concern that violence was continuing in the far north, northwest, and southwest regions. I regret the fact that the violence in the northwest and southwest regions is now targeting civilians, including students and teachers, as well as clerics. During my visit, I've reiterated the appeal launched by the Secretary General to all relevant stakeholders to renounce violence, silence their guns, and end attacks on civilians and civilian extrastructures such as schools. In connection with this, I would like to remind all stakeholders to remain engaged in a constructive dialogue in order to put an end to the crisis in the two regions and achieve lasting peace and development. I take note of the commitment of national authorities to continue implementing the presidential program for the reconstruction and development of the two regions, which would be further strengthened by dialogue and the cessation of hostilities. I'm particularly concerned by the fact that Boko Haram continues to pose a serious threat in the Lake Chad Basin, with an increase in the number of attacks and kidnappings, among other things. Terrorist groups have continued to step up their attacks in Cameroon and Chad and improve their modes of operation, as was shown by a recent attack which took place in the night from 24th to 25th of November, during which 4 Chadian soldiers were killed and approximately 16 others were injured after their boat apparently collided with an improvised explosive device in the Ngubua region in Lake Chad. One cannot overemphasize the need to address the crisis in the Lake Chad Basin in a holistic manner, particularly in the context of the regional strategy for the stabilization, recovery, and resilience of Boko Haram affected areas of the Lake Chad Basin. Despite the challenges caused by COVID-19, the regional action plan of the strategy was finalized, and the hardest hit 8 territories are now in the process of developing their territorial plans of action. I wish to once again appeal to the generosity of members of the Security Council and other partners and ask them to provide the necessary resources to swiftly implement the regional strategy so that the populations in the Lake Chad Basin can enjoy the dividends of peace, which in turn would strengthen their resilience in the face of radicalization and violent extremism. The proximity and the similarities in the situations between in the Lake Chad Basin and the Sahel justify monitoring and analyzing them jointly and coordinating our responses to the challenges arising there. More specifically, we need to establish links between the United Nations integrated strategy for the Sahel and the regional strategy for the Lake Chad Basin in order to avoid duplication, use resources more effectively, and ensure that the two strategies are mutually reinforcing. In the Gulf of Guinea, maritime-based organized crime continues to evolve, in particular drug trafficking, trafficking in persons, and smuggling of migrants. While commending the individual measures and bilateral cooperation initiatives undertaken by a number of states in the region in order to address maritime insecurity, I would like to underscore that responses to security threats to both states and persons in the region will not be effective unless they are coordinated between Central Africa and Western Africa through such mechanisms as the Interregional Center for Coordination and the Regional Maritime Security Centers for Central Africa, CRESMAC, and West Africa, CRESMAO. My colleague, Asarez G. Chambas of UNOWAS and myself have agreed to intensify our work to strengthen interregional cooperation and coordination on maritime security in the Gulf of Guinea, which is one of the top priorities of our two bureaus. During its 5th ministerial session, UNSAC recommended that a regional conference be held on maritime security in Central Africa. Transhumance and conflicts between farmers and herders have continued in Central Africa, as shown by the recent security incidents in the sub-region. On November 17th, the government of Chad announced that 22 persons were killed and 34 more were injured during a clash between farmers and herders in the night from 23 to 24 of November in the province of Mayo-Kebbi Est. According to the government, 66 persons were detained as a result of the incident, and the authorities also instituted a curfew in that area. I'll reiterate the Secretary General's appeal to governments and local communities in Central Africa to continue working together in order to address their common challenges related to transhumance. I also reaffirm UNOCA's commitment to continue supporting ECAS and its member states in their efforts to adopt a sub-regional regulatory framework on pastoralism and transhumance.
To conclude, I would like to emphasize that these threats to peace and security in Central Africa also affect other regions, especially West Africa and the Great Lakes. This is the case of the already mentioned instability in the Lake Chad Basin. Similarly, the Lord Resistance Army, LRA, is currently present in both Central and Great Lakes, two regions to which several countries under UNOCA purview belong. Addressing these threats requires coordination between all affected regions and between the UN regional offices. On 23rd November, SRG Chambers and I agree on a set of joint activities that our offices will undertake with regard to the situation in Lake Chad Basin and the Gulf of Guinea, and support to the implementation of the Lomé Declaration adopted at the 2018 ECOWAS Summit on Peace, Security, Stability, and the fight against terrorism and violent extremism. I will also continue to hold regular consultation with my colleagues from the Office of the Special Envoy for Great Lakes Region, UNAU, MINUSCA, and MONUSCO, as well as UN resident coordinators and regional offices to address inter-regional challenges. All these coordination efforts are intended to improve our understanding of challenges in our areas of responsibilities and to better support the affected countries to address them. I thank you for your kind attention.